First of all, thank you all for coming to the shir. It's really inspirational for me to be able to come out on a random Monday night and join together with hundreds of people to try to get ready together for Tisha B'Av. Last year, it really was a centerpiece of my preparation for Tisha B'Av, and so I was so happy and so honored that Rabbi Sam Shor invited me back. And of course, we're here in the Shirat David Beit Midrash, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention Rav Shlomo and Rav Shlomo's leadership for everything that happens here, in addition to bringing me in on a daily basis during the year. It's such a schus to be part of this community in one way, shape, or form, and it's such a schus to be able to work together with Rav Shlomo on the auspices of Mechon Zermat Haaretz. Also, feel free to chime in if people have questions or comments. We're not a large crowd, which is definitely better for an interactive shir. When Rav Sam Shor told me that the topic for tonight was going to be Am Chadash, Lev Chadash, there was one theme that immediately came to my mind. It's a theme that I've been thinking about a lot since October 7th in the last 2 years, and I know Rav Shlomo's been thinking about a lot as well. And that's as follows. There's been so much pain over the course of the last 2 years, so much sorrow, so much pain, so much trouble, and so much confusion as to what we should be doing in this moment. And OUisrael, we as Jews, we're looking for comfort, we're looking for solace, we're looking for guidance, we're looking for people to tell us what we should be thinking and feeling and doing in this moment. Where should we be looking for guidance? To whom should we be looking for solace and comfort? Who are the people that we should be looking at and saying, wow, they're the ones who are doing it right, I want to follow them. If I want to go through this tkufa properly as an Efrat Hashem, if I want to contribute to what OUisrael is going through, these are the people that I should be following. So that's an opening question. As a portal to explore that question, I would like to start with I guess a similar question, but something much more specific, and that is, whose responsibility is it to bring Mashiach? We're all thinking about Mashiach now. It's 9 days. We're thinking about Churban. We're thinking about Geula. Who's the ones that we should be looking at? Who are the ones that are responsible, according to the Masorah, according to Torah, according to Jewish tradition, to be the ones that are supposed to be the people who are ultimately going to bring the final Geula, that are ultimately going to be the ones that tip the scale to bring Mashiach? And I think if you look in the Jewish tradition, if you look in the Masorah, if you look in Torah, for many generations, for close to 2 millennium, the answer was clear. The answer was the tzadikim, the leaders. If you're Hasidish, a tzaddik with a capital tzaddi, there's these people who have a different type of neshama. If you're not Hasidish, the tzadikim with a lowercase tzaddi, the people that are just righteous individuals, the people that are Talmidei Chachamim, the people that have more Torah and more Ma'aseh Mitzvos than the rest of us, they're going to be the ones who are ultimately going to bring Mashiach. They're going to be the ones that tip God's hand to bring the ultimate Geula. And you see this all over Torah. You see this all over the Jewish tradition. Just, we're not going to read the whole Gemara, but one Gemara which explicates this point is a pretty fascinating story in the Gemara in Bava Metzia, Daf Pehei Amid Beis. The Gemara says, Eliyahu hava shchiach mevsifted Rabbi. Eliyahu used to frequent the yeshiva of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Yom Achad, Reish Yarkahava, one day it was Rosh Chodesh, Nagav V'lei V'lasa. Eliyahu Navi was late. He didn't come. So I don't know if he was officially enrolled, officially signed up, but Rabbi Yehuda Nasi took umbrage at this. Eliyahu Navi, every day you come, Rosh Chodesh, what are you? You went to Shirat David, you davened a long Hallel in Rosh Chodesh, so you came late? Like, what's going on over here? Amar Le. So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said to Eliyahu Navi, my time anagalei lamar. Why did you come late? Eliyahu Navi, you should have showed up in time for the shir. Amar Le. Eliyahu Navi said, Adu ukimna l'Avram mashina yadeu matzle. I woke up Avram Avinu in Chevron, and I washed his hands, and he davened. Then I laid Avram Avinu back to sleep. V'chein liYitzchak, v'chein liYaakov. What was Eliyahu Navi doing on this Rosh Chodesh? Waking up the avos one by one, having them daven, and then helping them go back to sleep again. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi asked Eliyahu, "V'lo kaminu wake them all up at once. Then you could have come to shir on time." Savri. Takfei rach barachame umaisle l'mashiach belozmane. What would happen if all the avos davened at the same time? They would have forced Hashem's hand to bring Mashiach. So what's our first clue? Who are the people, who are the neshamos that are going to force Hashem's hand to bring Mashiach? Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Amar Le, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, Are there any people alive today that have this koach to force Hashem's hand to bring Mashiach? Amar le, Ika, Rabbi Chia Avanav, Rabbi Chia and his children, they were the ones that could force Hashem's hands through their tefillos to bring Mashiach. So what did Rabbi do? Gazar Rabbi Tanisa, I guess the day after Rosh Chodesh, he's like, let's get them to daven. How do you get people to daven? Declare a fast day. Achtinu Rabbi Chia Avanav, and Rabbi Chia and his children led the Amud, they stood at the Amud and led the tefillos. Amar Masha v'ruach v'nash vazika. They said Masha v'ruach, the wind started blowing. Amar Morad Gashem v'asta mitra. They said Morad Gashem, and the rain started falling. Ki matzah l'meimor mechayim esim ragash alma. When they started saying mechayim esim, the world started shaking. Amri berakia man gali v'zayib alma. Who let this secret in? The Rechiah and his children could force my hand, Hashem says, to bring Mashiach. Amri Elio. They got the word out. It was Elio Hanavi. He was trying to explain to Rabbi Yonasi why he came late to Shir. He let out the secret that there are tzadikim that could force Hashem's hands to bring Mashiach. And then the Gemara says that Elio Hanavi was punished because of this. So it's a pretty fascinating story. I don't really know what it means, but I think one point that for our purposes is clear. Who are the people that could bring Mashiach? Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Rabbi Chia Ubanav. How would you describe these people in contemporary English? The tzadikim, the leaders of the generation. They were the ones that could force Hashem's hands to bring Mashiach. If you look throughout Hasidic Svarim, you find this theme over and over and over again. Look at just as one example. Look at source number 2. Sefer Tovos Zechronos. I don't remember exactly who wrote this, but it's a story of recollections of different statements from Aaron Abels, who survived the Holocaust and rebuilt bells in Israel. His Ba'achas HaShabbasos, source number 2, Shemati mikadosh kvokashasa marenu Rav Aaron mibelza zukusa yoganelinu, Shamar Hashem zekenu zukusa yoganelinu. He said about his grandfather. Who was Rav Aaron Belzer's grandfather? I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know. Somebody could Google it, or we can find it on Wikipedia. Shayu kamat tzadikim shayam bekokam lahavi Mashiach. Again, who are the ones that could bring Mashiach? The tzadikim. But if they would have davened and forced Hashem's hand to bring Mashiach, it would have happened with a lot of pain, with a lot of koshi. But if the tzaddikim don't force Hashem's hand and Hashem wills it by himself, then it could be a barachamim. So again, from the Gemara down to Hasidic Makoros, there are many more Makoros that explicate this point. Who are the ones that have the koach to bring Mashiach, to bring Geula? It's the tzaddikim. It's the leaders. It's the tzaddikim with a capital tzaddik. It's the leader of the generation, the Talmidei Chachamim. They're the ones who can bring Mashiach. According to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, according to Rav Kook, according to many other tzaddikim in the last 100 years, this notion that tzaddikim are the ones that bring Mashiach begins to shift in the last 100 years or so. The Lubavitcher Rabbi, I think, was the one who said this most explicitly, but it's there already in the writings of Rav Kook, and I think this is an idea that I've been thinking about a lot over the course of the last 2 years. Let's look at source number 3 for a second, and then from the Lubavitcher Rabbi, and then we'll take a step back. Purim Tufshin Mem Zayin, Purim 1987. For many of us, it doesn't mean anything, but for people that are really holding in Chabad, that was a seminal Purim where the Lubavitcher Rebbe listed maybe 15 different reasons why Mashiach was coming tomorrow. He said, if you want to understand why do I keep on saying Mashiach is coming, Mashiach is coming, Mashiach is coming, here are the reasons, l'shvach or l'gnai, there's some amazing things happening in the world, some horrible things happening in the world. This is my calculus as to why I keep on saying Mashiach is coming immediately. What's the problem then? He had been saying it for years. Mashiach still hadn't come. So there are a couple of sichos here and there. The Lubavitcher Rebbe recognizes this problem, and he explicates it. I think Mashiach should have come yesterday, so why didn't Mashiach come? Look at source number 3. In the middle of a drunken Purim Farbrengen. V'im kain. Thank God for those Chabad people, thank God for the transcript probably, for the tape. I'm not sure, but otherwise we'd have any recording of this. V'im kain, miskazakas aud yoser ha'sheila ad masai. Mashiach should have come already. Why hasn't Mashiach not come? The Lubavitcher Rebbe says, I struggled over this. I thought about this. He doesn't often say that. Things were very clear to him. There are very few places that I'm familiar with where the Lubavitcher Rebbe says, I thought about this for a long time. What is the only explanation I have found as to why Mashiach has not yet come? Mehanasi hu hakol el hakol. Hainu, the kol akad v'akad miYisrael. The Baba Rabbi is very well aware of the Masorah. Tzadikim are the ones who daven from Mashiach. How many, if you're living in a shtetl in the 1600s in Eastern Europe, how much did you think about Mashiach? I don't know. I'm not sure if we have historical evidence about that. Presumably, probably not so much. Did your Rebbe, did your Shul Rav, did the tzaddik of that town think about Mashiach? The answer is probably yes. Why has Mashiach not yet come, according to this Sikha of the Baba Rabbi Tafshin Mem Zayin? Because ultimately, who are the people that are supposed to be responsible to bring Mashiach in the last generation? Amcha, not the Yechidei Skula. The job has transitioned, the mission has transitioned from being the responsibility of the leaders to being the responsibility of Am Yisrael as a whole. Klomar, kol od haya inyan da nasi hu hakol. In earlier generations, you could rely on the nasi, the leader. This is a quote from Rashi in Parshas Kukas. Hanasi hu hakol. V'kol anshe hador hayu mesurim elav v'chulei. And the people were loyal to the nasi, but the nasi was the one who was actively working to bring Mashiach. Efshar haya letzeis ayidei chavasa ayidei zev v'lomar she'inyan shayach l'nasi ador b'lvad. Holchem u'miskarvim lizman devi'ita v'achishena. We are getting close to the time when Mashiach has to come. Hari akshav niyahechrek gondol v'as yoser l'asok bazeh u'memila hadavar nimsa l'kol echad v'echad miYisrael. The job has been democratized. It is no longer the mission just of the Nasi. You're a firm Jew, you do whatever you want, you learn Torah, you do mitzvahs, you do chesed, but Mashiach is too great of a topic for you to think about. Geula is too great of a topic for you to think about. That might have been true in earlier generations. But in earlier generations, we're not successful in bringing Mashiach. These tzaddikim on their own were not successful in getting us over the finish line. Either Hashem didn't want them to, or they couldn't do it. Who is going to be the people that get us over the finish line? Kol echad v'echad miYisrael. The mission has been democratized. It is now incumbent on everybody to think in terms of Geula, to think in terms of Mashiach, to think practically. What is your most Mashiach going to look like? And what can I do in my own personal life to try to get us closer to that reality? We were all responsible to think in those terms, and not just the Nasi, not just the Tzaddikei Hador. And the Baba Rabbi explained in numerous instances, on numerous occasions, that this is not a shallowing out of the mission. Rather, what is happening as we get closer to Mashiach? In earlier generations, Hasidic literature is filled with this. We have a distinction between the tzaddik and the average person. A tzaddik has a special neshama. The tzaddik has a different type of avodas Hashem. A tzaddik has unique responsibilities, a unique way of looking at the world. And Tanya even tells you over and over again, if you're not a tzaddik, if you don't have that neshama, leave it on the side. It's not for you. Your avodas Hashem is different than avodas Hashem of a tzaddik. What is the messianic reality, though? What does Yeshayahu Navi say about Am Yisrael when Mashiach comes? V'amech kulam tzadikim. Every single Jew, Am Yisrael as a whole, are going to be entirely comprised of tzaddikim. Every Jew has a pintalayid, has a tzaddik sheba neshama, Mashiach, a nitzos and Mashiach in his neshama, and the messianic reality is that nitzos becomes manifest, that nitzos becomes real. So we're not talking about a shallowing out of the mission. That in earlier generations, the mission was just for the tzaddik, and now it's for everybody. What are we doing? We're elevating the level of Am Yisrael, elevating the level of the average Jew to the level of a tzaddik, such that in our generation, no matter if we're deserving or not deserving, by dint of the fact we are living in the final generations before Mashiach, we have a responsibility to think in terms differently than our babas and zetas, to think in terms differently than people in earlier generations. And we can't rely on the tzaddikim to think about Mashiach, and for us just to say, I just want to be a firm Jew. I want to learn Torah and do mitzvos and do a little bit of chesed. Every single Jew has to think historically, has to think broadly, has to think about Geula, about redemption. Learn what is the time of Geula going to be like, and how can I help bring myself, my family, my community, and the entire world closer to that reality. You want to see it inside. Source number 4. This is a speech from 1991, Tafshin and Aleph, Chel Gimel. Again, this is it's part of a much longer speech. In the beginning of the speech, the Baba Rabbi delineated what is the avodah of a tzaddik versus the avodah of the average person. Then look what he says. Source number 4. שלאחרי כל העניינים של בירור וזיכוך שבני ישראל עברו במשך הדורות, after all of the trials and tribulations, the ups and the downs that Am Yisrael went throughout all the generations, יכול עכשיו כל יהודי להגיע לדרגות הכי גבוהות עד תהי tzaddik בגילוי. הגילוי של ועמי כולם tzadikim. What are we able to do? To reach the level of a tzaddik, something that was out of limits for people in earlier generations. But as the Rabbi said in his first speech, in Bas Degani Tafshin Aleph, our response, it's not because we're better than earlier generations, it's not because we're more deserving. Hashem put us in the last generation. Hashem put us in the final Tekufa before Mashiach. Therefore, we have unique responsibilities that were relegated to tzaddikim in earlier generations. They are now incumbent upon us to start thinking in those terms and to act accordingly. I can't talk about this topic without reading a little bit of source number 5. In Chabad circles, there's something called Sicha HaYadua, the known Sicha. This is Chavkas Nisan Tafshin Nun Aleph. This is one of the few times the Rabbi spoke in first person, probably one of the only times he publicly expressed frustration. Mashiach hadn't actually not yet come. It was a surprise for Bringen. It was after Mariv. The Rebbe came back from the Ohel, Daven Mariv, and afterwards he started speaking. Look at source number 5. It says, Ma o yocholni la'asos, kei shekol b'nei Yisrael yar'ishu v'yitz'aku be'emes, what more can I do to be marish, to create a storm, to create energy behind the push to bring Mashiach? Everything we've done until now has not yet worked. Again, a dogged optimism throughout all the Rabbi's talks. Here is a sense of frustration. Probably, I think he's 90 years old. He's worked so much, accomplished more than anybody else could have ever imagined, but he didn't reach his final goal, which was to bring Mashiach. And it clearly ate him up inside. Look at the next paragraph. Hadavar hayachid sheyecholni la'asos. What is the last and final thing that I can do? Limsar inyan aleichem. Pass over the mission to you, to the Chasidim, to Am Yisrael. Asu kol shar b'yachaltem. Inyanim shem ba'ofen de'oros v'tau, avo b'kilim d'tikun. Lavi b'folos Mashiach d'keino takef v'miyan mamish. He passes the baton, passes the mission on to the entirety of the Jewish people. Why was I thinking so much about this theme over the course of the last 2 years? I know not just myself or Shlomo as well, and many other people. I don't want to say anything bad about Am Yisrael. I don't want to say anything bad about particular Jews, or about their hanhagos, about different activities, behaviors, policies, and decisions over the course of the last 2 years. But I think Jews around the world, and particularly Jews in Eretz Yisrael, have felt a dearth of leadership. We're living through crazy times. We're living through unprecedented times. We're living through times of tsar and trouble and death and destruction and pain. And we're looking for voices that are going to give us solace. We're looking for voices that are going to give us comfort. We're looking for voices that are going to bring us together. We're looking for voices that are going to give us guidance in terms of how we should act and feel and think during this crazy tkufa. And I know for myself, looking upwards, so to speak, to people in official national leadership positions did not necessarily do it in terms of actually offering guidance and solace and comfort. But according to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who are we supposed to be looking at in order to gain solace, comfort, guidance in the last generation? Am Yisrael. And Am Yisrael has been so phenomenal over the course of the last 2 years, starting with the soldiers and the families of soldiers, and going to volunteer groups and just people in neighborhoods that are taking care of each other. There are so many inspirational stories. It is so inspiring to live in Eretz Yisrael over the course of the last 2 years, together with all the troubles and with all the pain and with all the suffering and with all the fragmentation and with all the friction and with all the lack of leadership. Just living together with Amcha Yisrael has been so inspiring, it's been so meaningful, it's been so uplifting. We're not looking upwards, so to speak. Again, of course, we have Rabbanim, we have Talmidei Chachamim, we have people that know more Torah than us, and we have Tzadikim to guide us. But I think the focus, in terms of where we should be looking, where we have looked practically to gain those voices of solace and comfort and guidance, has shifted from looking upwards at the top of the hierarchy to looking at Am Yisrael, looking at the average Jew, looking what has the average Jewish family gone through in Eretz Yisrael, maybe around the world, over the course of the last 2 years. How many inspirational, uplifting, elevating things have they done? Look at our neighbors. Look at the communities. Look at people who are serving, families of people who have served, people that are still involved in volunteer groups. It's unbelievable what's gone on here in Eretz Yisrael in the last 2 years. And these are the tzadikim, not necessarily tzadikim, the capital tzadi, the single nasi hador, or the leaders of the communities, but Amcha Yisrael. These are the people that we could be looking at to gain comfort and solace and guidance over the course of this final push before we reach Mashiach. And for the Lubavitch Rebbe, this was a mission he was handing over to his Hasidim, to Am Yisrael. I'm not sure if it's something which he actively saw happening. Rav Kook, 100 years ago, writes about this process has already started. Look at source number 7. This is 3 lines out of Maimar Hador. Again, Rav Kook is dealing with a very fragmented generation. He's dealing with an older generation of frum Jews, of Talmidei Chachamim, people who are connected to the Torah. He's dealing with a generation of young Jews that have thrown away Kedusha and Torah and the Masorah, yet they're Moser Nefesh for Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. And Rav Kook starts off describing this tension, and then somewhere before he gets to his solution, he has the following sentences. Rav Kook writes as follows, source number 7. Berube tekufos historia. In most historical periods, we find in earlier generations a great, amazing people, the Rambam, Rashi, Rishonim. We're amazed at how great they were, ve'oz rucham, and the strength of their spirits. But how much did the average Jew know? There was no public education. Most Jews were literate. They were more literate than their Christian neighbors. But the average Jew was not necessarily on a very high level in terms of knowledge of Torah, in terms of ruchnius. But in the later generations, these giants have started decreasing. But Am Yisrael, the collective, has started ascending. Be'amenu, in our nation, nismatu haborim. The people that are ignorant, people that don't know Torah, have been minimized, have decreased. Ulumasam nismantu v'uktinu hagaonim v'tzadikim. But there's been a parallel decrease of actual real gaonim and real tzadikim. Rav Kook describes the tension that creates and the problems that creates, but he also describes the opportunity that creates. Because ultimately, Rav Kook writes this, who are going to be the ones that are going to bring Mashiach? It's not just the tzaddik Hador. We want tzaddik Hador. We want Lubavitch Rebbe. We want Rav Kook. We want this type of leadership because we want to know what we should be thinking and feeling and doing during this time period. But ultimately, it's Am Yisrael as a whole that is being elevated when they're here in Eretz Yisrael. And those are the people, Amcha, our neighbors, our friends, our families, our communities. These are the people that are ultimately going to help bring Mashiach and ultimately help bring the Geula. Just to follow the pasuk of the Lubavitch Rebbe, "Va'amei kulam tzadikim," and what are the next words in the pasuk? Li'olam yirshu aretz. The Lubavitch Rebbe doesn't focus on this, but I think we see it happening here in Eretz Yisrael. When Am Yisrael returns to Eretz Yisrael, then the kochos that were tamun, the kochos that were hidden, they are concealed in the neshama of the collective Am Yisrael, come out. And we saw this over the course of the last 2 years, and in Mir Hashem we should continue to see it, not in times of tension and distress, but in times of revach and atzala, that the neshama of Am Yisrael as a whole should be able to become more and more elevated. Just to conclude, one more piece from Rav Kook, and then a concluding thought. Source number 8. Here is a place where Rav Kook says explicitly that the notion of a tzaddik gets dispersed as you're getting closer to Mashiach. Samak le'ikva de Mashiach. When you get close to ikvas de Mashiach, misraba segula sa'achdus be'uma. There is more koach for unity among Am Yisrael. Hamasim hatovim madelos v'or eloki hanemtzaim b'tzadikim. The level of a tzaddik, the ma'asim tovim, the deos tovos, the or eloki that is found in a tzaddik, poalim akdushas haklal yoser mi b'shar hazmanim. As you get closer to Mashiach, you all become elevated. There is no longer ibadim. There no longer has to be such a hierarchy. Every Jew becomes kadosh. V'amik kulam tzadikim. Again, we need leaders. We need rabbanim. We need madhigim to look up to. But I think that the Rav Kook is saying that really the place we're going to find our solace is going to be looking at our neighbors and our friends and our communities and Am Yisrael, Shabbat Yisrael. These are the people that we should look to in order to gain inspiration. I think this is a beautiful idea, and I think it's something which we've lived through empirically. We've seen it over the course of the last 2 years. I think one practical takeaway is the importance of hischabrus, to be mischaber to Am Yisrael. There's a lot of talk about and during this time period of avas chinam, sinas chinam versus avas chinam. In theory, the way sometimes I think about it is that you don't have to go out there in the street. You don't have to talk to people. Avas chinam could be done. I'm in my house. I'm by myself. I'm in my own corner. But I have to start thinking about the uniqueness of Jewish Hashama and get myself to love other Jews. I think here we're seeing a different facet of sinas chinam and avas chinam. Avas chinam is not just about loving Jews in the abstract. It's about, practically speaking, being mischaber to Am Yisrael. It's going out there in the streets, go to the Kotel, go to the streets of Yerushalayim, walk around Efrat, get involved in your community. When the more connected to Am Yisrael we are, the more connected to the Ame Kulam Tzadikim we are, the closer we are going to be to that level of a tzaddik that is there inherent in the neshama of Am Yisrael as a whole, and the closer we're going to be to that reality of the Ame Kulam Tzadikim for ourselves, for our families, and for our communities. And Amir Hashem, if we do that properly over the course of the next week, hopefully we won't have to have a Tisha B'Av, and we should be able to see the Gilui of the Ame Kulam Tzadikim, the Olam Yershu Aretz, B'Shalom V'Shalva.